welcome, guys. Sorry we've had a little bit of technical difficulty trying to get this hooked up, but I just wanted to get a quick sound check. Fabienne, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. While we're, I'm going to do a quick introduction. And first off, I want to say, if you guys have not met me, my name is Metropolitan. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater North Chamber of Commerce. And we are a relatively new Chamber of Commerce. We've been around. We're going on our 4th year. But we have 211 members. We've had networking events all over North Texas. And our goal is really to try to fill in gaps where there's a lot of, where there isn't enough of a Hispanic chamber presence, we're going to be there. And so this forum is really for members and people that are engaged in the community to learn a little bit about what's happening in North Texas. But it's also to get you guys involved in some of the initiatives that we have. One thing that we want to make sure is we don't get away too much from doing things that do not serve our community. And so this is an opportunity for you guys to voice out what you want the Chamber of Commerce to do. And so we have 2 great special guests today. But I did want to start out by introducing Fabienne Doucet. And she is let me pull this up, is the Executive Director of the NYU Metropolitan Center for Research and Equity and the Transformation of Schools and Associate Professor of Early Childhood Education at Urban Education in the Department of Teaching and Learning at the NYU Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. She is an affiliated faculty member of the NYU Institute of Human Development and Social Change and Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. She was born in Spain, raised in Haiti, and migrated to the U.S. at the age of 10. Doucet embodies a hybrid identity that is mirrored in her interdisciplinary approach to examining how immigrant and U.S.-born children of color and their families navigate education in the United States. A critical ethnographer, Doucet specifically studies how taken for granted beliefs, practices, and values in the U.S. educational system position linguistically, culturally, and socioeconomically diverse children and families at a disadvantage, and seeks active solutions for meeting their educational needs. Doucet has a PhD in Human Development and Family Studies from UNC Greensboro, and was a postdoctoral fellow at the Harvard Graduate School of Education with fellowships from the National Science Foundation and the National Academy of Education Spencer Foundation. So Fabienne, welcome. And if you can just give us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today.
Hi, thanks so much for inviting me to be here. I am happy to be here to share with you some thoughts about the recent SCOTUS decision on race-conscious college admissions and the implications that this has for affirmative action.
All right, thank you, Fabienne. And the floor is yours. We're ready when you are.
Okay, great. Okay. So hi, everybody. I wish I could see all of you, but please accept my warm greetings. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. Is that just me?
I think we're good on our end.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll just live with it. If you hear any delays, it's probably because I'm hearing myself twice. So
I hear it twice as well.
Okay.
Just FYI.
We will do our best. Well, thank you all again for inviting me to chat with you all. I look forward to a conversation. I just wanted to start by telling you a little bit more about myself. And I think the idea is that I will talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then open it up for questions. But please feel free, like if you have any questions, please make sure to pass them on to whoever there is like hosting or taking notes so that they can share them with me. But since I can't see all of you, I'm going to need things in the chat, or I'm going to need like somebody else to kind of direct the Q&A. But basically, as you read in my bio, I immigrated to the U.S. From Haiti at the age of 10. In Haiti, I was raised by my great aunt and uncle while my mother lived and worked in the U.S. And I spent my summers in Haiti. And then when I moved to the U.S. to start middle school, when I was 10, I spent my summers in Haiti, and my mother was still here, and I was visiting my parents in Haiti. So my family's really big, and I had lots of cousins, have lots of cousins who are pretty close in age. So when it was time for me to go to college, I actually had 5 older cousins that I could look to for advice who had just gone through it, a few years before me. But even then, it felt a lot like I was a first generation college student because my mother hadn't attended college. Most members of my family had not attended college in the United States, the adults. My cousins had barely figured things out for themselves. Nonetheless, I know that I benefited a lot from coming from an educated family in Haiti, so that even if I didn't fully understand how everything worked in the US, I knew how to seek advice, I knew how to get mentorship, and I fully credit the network of professors and mentors that I had for encouraging me to pursue my PhD and my studies eventually to get a PhD. And I share all this background because I think it's important to add personal stories and personal context to issues like race-based admissions, race-conscious admissions, or affirmative action, which oftentimes these things can feel like policies that are like removed from the everyday lives of real people, but actually they have very real consequences for us every single day. So please feel free to ask, any questions that you might have, any curiosities that you might have about my personal story. But I just kind of want to let you know me just a little bit about kind of where I'm coming from into this conversation. But as we all know by now, earlier this summer, on June 29, 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision that race-conscious college admissions policies at both Harvard University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill violate the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. The case resulted from an anti-affirmative action group, Students for Fair Admissions, suing both Harvard University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill over the race-conscious admissions policies of each school. The complaint issued by the Students for Fair Admissions argued that the admissions policies at these schools favored Black and Latino applicants. In addition, they alleged that Harvard University's admissions policies unfairly discriminated against Asian American applicants. So while this decision addresses race-conscious college and university admissions policies, meaning that it is not a ruling on affirmative action, it is difficult not to ascribe this SCOTUS opinion with a host of other continuing anti-equity assaults, anti-DEI, we're like sort of in this anti-equity, anti-DEI era, on historically marginalized communities within the last 12 to 18 months. We've seen attacks and efforts to ban books, repurpose libraries, undermine public education, along with efforts to turn words like gay, trans, and woke into pejorative terms. And so all of this certainly feels like they're all part of a larger effort to roll back the hard-earned progress that Blacks, immigrants, people of color, Latinos, Asians, that many of us have worked, and women have worked to make over many, many years. Indigenous folks and so on. So this SCOTUS decision feels really targeted and personal for many of us, because understandably, while we know that policies such as affirmative action, policies such as race-conscious admissions are not perfect, these policies actually have allowed institutions to take marginalized categories like race and gender and open doors and crack ceilings that have been resistant and slow to change. According to senior reporter Jessica Gwynn in her article for USA Today that was published June 29th, research shows that white women today are more educated and make up a bigger slice of the workforce as a result of decades of affirmative action policies. So while a lot of times affirmative action policies are associated with race, they are very much also meant to protect gender. So white women have also made inroads into corporate leadership that people of color and women have not. The original goal of affirmative action was to reduce race and gender discrimination in education, employment, and government contracting, but it has often been characterized as a racial quota program. And this is just simply not accurate. So again, from Gwynn's article, in the past 6 decades, women have leapfrogged men in earning 4-year degrees, while Black and Latino students are still underrepresented in college admissions and graduation rates, especially in 4-year colleges. A similar trend has been seen in the workplace. According to a USA Today analysis of named executive at the nation's 100 largest companies. From 2020 to 2022, white women expanded their share of senior leadership jobs at twice the rate of women of color, though women remained outnumbered 4-1. So despite these marginal gains among men of color, white men still hold about 2/3 of the top jobs, even though they account for just 1/3 of US workers. So things are still quite unequal, right? This example of gender speaks to the short-sightedness of focusing on race when it comes to things like race-conscious admission, because family wealth, legacy, the social capital of coming from generations of college goers, gender, all these things are actually huge advantages that until more recently, thanks to the lead up to and the results of the SCOTUS ruling, really weren't part of the mainstream conversation about what makes our society unequal, but it really needs to be. So I'm a scholar of education. I study equity in education, immigrants, all that good stuff that was that you heard in my bio. So because of my interests, and I teach in a department of teacher preparation, teaching and learning, my focus in the aftermath of the SCOTUS decision has been in really thinking about the downstream consequences that this has for education. The US student body is more diverse than ever before. Nonetheless, public schools remain highly segregated along racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic lines. According to the US Government Accountability Office, more than 1/3 of students, about 15.8 million of them, attended a predominantly same race, same ethnicity school, and 14% of students attended schools where almost all of the student body was of a single race ethnicity. We also know there's a disproportionate representation of white women teachers as opposed to teachers of color in classrooms. At least 80% of at least 80% of teachers are white women, whereas the student population is a lot more diverse than that, in some states even being 64% students of color. So to quote Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, until we get equality in education, we won't have an equal society. We see this in K-12 education with battles over admission to competitive public school programs like gifted programs and magnet schools, to how high school counselors will advise BIPOC students about the college search process, to building a pipeline of BIPOC teachers that more accurately reflects the demographics of our student population. And this is something that we think a lot about in my field. So according to the US Census Bureau's American Community Survey, as of 2021, 50% of all whites aged 25 to 64, had a college degree. That's 50% of all whites aged 25 to 64 had a college degree, compared to only 34% of Blacks and 28% of Hispanics. And according to an article in Education Trust, Hispanic students have less access to high quality pre-K and attend schools that are more poorly funded. They also have less access to experienced teachers, a full range of math and science courses, school counselors, and gifted, talented, and advanced placement and international baccalaureate programs. Needless to say, schools in this country are failing many Hispanic students. These statistics and others like them evidence Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown's Jackson assertion that deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. And that's a really important distinction. So what I want to say to you today about this decision is that it is an attack on people of color in the guise of fairness. The phrase, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression, comes to mind. It's also important to understand that although this decision may lead to chilling effects, where schools and workplaces are afraid to lean into what we know about the benefits of institutions in which a diversity of lived experiences are present, we also have to remember that we need to fight back. And one of the ways to do that is to distinguish between what this decision is and what it is not, and also to think about what are some proactive things that we can do. So recently, legal scholar Art Coleman gave a webinar to the NYU community where he really broke down what the implications are of this ruling for higher education. And then we got into a broader conversation about education in general. And so I just want to share some highlights from that because I learned so much from it and believe that you all can as well. So one of the main points that he made was that popular media are saying affirmative action is dead, but that is not true. That's not what the ruling said. The rulings are about Harvard and UNC, and they say that institutions can determine their own mission. The ruling did not wipe out 45 years of precedent. So it didn't erase race-conscious admissions for the whole country, only for Harvard and UNC. However, we should be sober and realistic in knowing that this decision should be read as a foundation for other institution-specific policies. So technically, only Harvard and UNC for now, but other institutions probably will use this, right, to try to get decisions going in their direction. However, the court also recognized that notwithstanding the consideration of race, we do recognize the value of student experience that may be related to their race, right? This is one of those points that kind of people have been picking through with a fine-tooth comb. So this shouldn't prevent applicants from discussing how race has affected their life. We are not in a race-blind world, even legally. The court implied race-blind institutions, but they actually acknowledged that race can impact a student's experience. And even that a student's experience tied to their race and discrimination could be something that is brought up. So they're really kind of towing a fine line there. And I think the bottom line is that rhetoric gets ahead of the reality, right? So, we're in this, again, this political moment where any talk about equity, all this stuff is being kind of relegated to wokeness and basically like, oh, everybody's overreacting and racism isn't real and it's a thing of the past, and all these attempts to rewrite history and all this kind of stuff. But all this rhetoric, kind of blurs our vision and gets in the way of the reality. The actual experiences of institutions is that they really need to focus on what the law describes as a race neutral policy legally, and what characteristics a organization might have that is tied to their mission that has to do with race. So in other words, it is perfectly fine for institutions to have a mission that actually brings race into consideration. The institutions are permitted to do that. So we need to find silver linings in this otherwise bad decision. One is that you can both pursue race neutral strategies and not be race blind. So we don't want to, just kind of call things race neutral, but we need to focus on our intent, our articulation, and then think about impact. So if we have, for example, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce have goals associated with diversity aims, it's critical to associate that with the mission of the organization. And that means that you're mission driven, and be mission driven means that you are allowed to use race and ethnicity as factors that would weigh membership and so forth. Thinking about, for example, like implications for high school counselors, I talked about like how are high school counselors going to be advising students? Well, the advice for high school counselors is let the colleges navigate that fine line. Let students tell their authentic stories as best as they can. And I think this has, kind of broader implications as well if we're thinking about the world of business. Let the legal folks figure out, the finer details of these things. But, when you're making your hiring decisions, let people tell their authentic story of who they are. Be mission driven about what kind of business that you want to have. Be mission driven about the kind of representation that you want to have because you know that it benefits us. Institutional excellence tied to institutionally driven goals is inextricably linked with diversity. You cannot talk about innovative healthcare strategies, for example, for the entire US population without awareness of how medical impacts, medical issues, and health effects vary by race. You can't, right? Graduate business schools have innovation at their core, and you can't optimize innovation if you have a room full of people who have the same life experience, same perspective, grew up the same way. These things are things that we know. We know these things from experience. We know them also from research. The ruling does not address recruitment and outreach and pipeline programs, which is also super important for us to know. The federal courts have said that those are not race conscious. So if you have in your business a pipeline program or a recruitment program where you want to outreach and say, we need to bring in more of those diverse voices, the federal courts have actually said that those are not race conscious. So this is a moment where our psychology is as important to the conversation and to the moment that we're in as much as law and policy. We need to ensure that communities of color feel cared for, know that they're cared for, know that they're valued, know that they're important, and what they bring to the table is really important to us. It's a moment for institutional leadership. And we have seen statements from different institutions saying that, even universities saying this is how we are going to interpret what this ruling means, and we are not going to kind of be pushed back into 50, 100 years ago. But we want to show through our leadership that it is possible to be fair, to give everybody equal consideration, and also to say diversity matters to us. We want to ensure that we have a wide array, a representation in our institution that is reflective of the broader society that we live in and that we want to live in, and so forth. And we just need to be creative and innovative in the broader design of our policies. So I'm going to stop there because I don't want to just keep talking at you this whole time. But I would love to hear any questions that you might have, or just kind of open the floor up to conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, so my name is Jasmine. I am a diversity wellbeing practitioner from an organization, and I just wanted to know what kind of advice you have for those who are leading in organizations that are removing language such as demographics, they're removing diversity goals, things that are happening in the corporate space. How can we be better champions, and what can we say to our legal departments and our different business partners who are telling us to move in a different direction? What's your tip? What's your advice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really excellent question. I think the message is that don't overreact. Basically don't put the cart in front of the horse. Like, yes, this decision has pinpointed specific guidelines, but what I'm seeing a lot in some institutions in the corporate world is like, okay, everybody, now it like you said, let's erase everything, right? It's like, nope, that's not what that means. That's not what that means. And this is where like we need to be visionary and we need to be leaders and say, okay, legal department, let's sit down and really think about what exactly is the letter of the law here, and let's make sure that we are not, breaking any laws, but also where is the space? Where is the opportunity? So for example, saying that, the ruling doesn't say anything about pipeline programs. So if we're removing this language completely, maybe we're going against our own mission, because one of our missions is to increase the pipeline of, fill in the blank, right? Increase the pipeline of engineers, increase the pipeline of healthcare workers, whatever the case may be. Like, let's be mission forward and let's be mission driven and not simply reactionary, but actually like really sit back and think. Because I think what happens with stuff like this is it is really scary, and right there, like it's very scary, very frightening, frustrating, all of that. But we really have to be really considerate and realize that the sort of knee-jerk reaction to then just say, okay, fine, let's erase everything, is like, that's actually the goal of the white supremacist drive behind this, right? That's the point. And we cannot give in to that.
Correct. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? I think we're good with questions right now. But thank you very much for this. I think this was very insightful, and we'll have this session recorded, so we'll make sure we're posting. I'll send you a copy of it. And if any questions come up throughout the week or throughout the month, is it okay if we send it to you?
Yes, absolutely. Please feel free to reach out to me. My colleague Jana Sanchez helped to make this connection, and so she will also be helping me to make sure that I don't miss any of your messages. So please definitely reach out and follow up. I'd be happy to come back. I'd be happy to answer more questions, whatever the case may be.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll be closing the session. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.